Where can we hide in fair weather, us orphans of the storm? Many people seem drawn towards conflict, seem ready to partake, and seem more than willing to see it through until they win. So, the reason why many people are drawn to conflict is because there's a conflict within themselves that they want to make coherent with the reality outside of themselves by believing certain things are inherent in society and humanity itself. We have this need to make everything that we believe, everything that we feel, substantiated by seeing it in reality. When actually, it's just a hopeful wish that we go about our lives believing. The belief in the necessity of conflict is very apparent in the human race. We think of things like Democrat versus Republican, Christian versus Satanist, communism versus capitalism. We want to hold on to our ideas so carefully and so deeply that we end up creating more conflict than there ever was in actuality. Once again, individuals need to substantiate their understanding of reality, causes their actions to push the world towards that. Not just their understanding of reality, but making that reality solid. That duality, like I'm this, other people are that. I'm in this group, they're in that group. It makes reality easier to understand because beliefs are usually very basic. They're very black and white, and they're very easy. That is why most people believe a number of things without either having the evidence or without understanding why they're projecting their fears or their ideology onto other people. Conflict does exist, but the belief in conflict is what allows it to propitiate throughout human history. That we need to fight this war, we need to do this, we need to do that. Humanity can only progress if we all do this or do that. And we end up fighting for a lot of things that we could have compromised on, or things that we could have found a middle ground on, things that we could have understood in a different way and not cause conflict. But people will always believe, not always, most people will believe the thing that is most easy and comfortable. And duality is very much easy and comfortable, black and white. If you don't understand the word duality, just think of black and white, my group, their group. As human beings, we are still evolving. Of course, as a species, but also in ideas, because we have the capability to conceive of things that are beyond the capacity that we've created society to sustain. We are still evolving in the way that emotions, we still haven't really gotten to a point where people can really control their emotions. Not necessarily deaden them or destroy them or anything like that, but allow your emotions to enter into your calculating machine that is your logic. Once we enter our emotions into that logic machine, the intellect that the human brain is definitely capable of, then it's much easier to come out with a coherent solution. The problem is not a lot of people feed what they believe or what they say or what they do into the logic machine of the intellect, and thus we get the situations that we have on Earth right now. Eventually, I think the human race will get to a point where it'd be easier to achieve consensus than it would be right now. Right now, there's no way to achieve consensus. What I mean by consensus is that everybody looks at the facts, looks at the ideas, and comes out with conclusions. Of course, I never see humanity as coming to a point where we all completely agree, but much more close to consensus than our emotional state right now and the emotional beings that we are right now. Attaching emotional reactions like anger, hate, fear to the ideas that we have. And because we attach those emotions to these things, there is conflict. it's not necessarily or always the ideas or even the beliefs. It's the emotions attached to them that cause all the trouble. Most people are drawn to conflict because there is also a perpetuation of a belief system of conflict throughout somebody's culture, family, society. We've always hated this. We've always hated the Packers. We've always loved the Cowboys. And then that gets passed on. This is our religion. Every other religion is this or that. That belief gets passed on. And it's easier to accept something from your peer group and your family and just believe it than it is to take a scalpel to it. Because the hatchet is far easier to cut, but we get not nearly as much precision when it comes to the mind. The scalpel is necessary. And the hatchet is given to everyone. The scalpel is something that we have to find, or something that we have to develop so that we can make things more nuanced. An inability to be nuanced is also what causes a lot of conflict. No matter what you believe, no matter what religion or spiritual path you're on, no matter what political path you're on, you have to understand nuance in order to lessen conflict and also lessen your own fears or anger. There are a lot of middles in the ground that people think are barren. Really, we just haven't cultivated them enough. We haven't cultivated the fields of comparison, of compromise, compassion, understanding. If we cultivate these fields properly between various positions, then they can be networks of trade, of ideas, rather than battlegrounds. And moving forward as a species, it's very hard for a lot of cultures to come to terms with one another because of seemingly alternative ideas or differing ideas that seem opposite. But it's more that people want to see them as opposite because they want to see people that look different, do different than them, to be other than they are, to be other than the interpreter. They do this, they do that, they are this, they are that. That's a desire for the division. And that's what creates a lot of conflict. But believe it or not, most people want that. They want that conflict to exist because it substantiates their own views. And a lot of people are afraid of being wrong. They're afraid of being wrong, so they project their uneasiness. They project their insecurities onto other people by acting against them, by throwing their ideas at them, by not wanting to listen to the other parties. So the reason ultimately that people are drawn to conflict is because it's actually easier. It's easier than compromise. You might say, well, in conflict, you might have to fight. You might have to kill in wars and things like that. Yes, but that's for our minds as human beings. It's easier and it makes more sense to do that because it's much harder to look at things and really understand them and accept nuance and move beyond the societal ideals and the parental ideals and the peer ideals, because a lot of people are afraid of being alone. They feel like if they gain their own opinions, or they really look at things and get their own opinions, or they just don't agree with their group, then that will isolate them. A lot of this is subconscious. It's not all conscious, of course, but people fear isolation to the point that they're willing to do whatever their group wants to do and whatever the group consensus is. In history, you see this time and time again. And that fear of loneliness, that fear of isolation, it's a healthy part of being an individual. It's okay. You can be isolated. You can be lonely. Don't be afraid of that. That's the first step to finding who you are. Being alone, being isolated. Don't be afraid of that. The people that are drawn to conflict always have a group, always join a group or have a group that they're born into and accept the rules of conflict rather than questioning them, even internally. Because we all have this need for inner security. Even if we don't say our ideas and we just think about them internally, it's much easier to have the security of just accepting certain ideas and getting in line. Much easier. So I think that most people are drawn to conflict because that is the state of things that they usually are born into or find around them, rather than the willingness to change, which is slowly getting more and more altitude until change becomes a projectile into human society. You will see what happens. We're still moving forward. This isn't a cynical message. This is actually a message of how conflict is, the nature of it, but also how we're moving forward. Because more people are willing to be an individual, to be unique, and to be alone. Because being alone is the first step. That might sound harsh, but it is. Then that's when you become a true individual. The steps you take after that. At any rate, thank you very much for watching. This has been a video about why people are drawn to conflict. I hope that this makes sense. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to shoot them down in the comment section below, or look me up on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Hunter Salazar, HUNTER Salazar. At any rate, thank you very much for watching. Find yourselves and have a wonderful day.